What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to discuss the career of Shoeless Joe Jackson. This is a player bio. Now, importantly, too, this is the first episode of our Black Sox Scandal week. There will be 5 episodes total this week. Now, this is going to be about the life of Shoeless Joe Jackson, life and baseball career of Shoeless Joe. Later on in the week, we're going to have a video discussing the other 7 players. Then we're going to have one discussing the actual fix itself along with the World Series. Then we're going to have one discussing the commissioner who would step up, Kennesaw Mountain Landis. And lastly, we're going to look at the effect of how this whole thing worked on the sport of baseball as a whole and even professional sports in the United States. Without further ado, we're going to jump right in here. Joseph Jackson was born on July 16th, 1887 in Pickens County, South Carolina. Now, Jackson's family moved a few times when he was a child, but they always remained in the state of South Carolina. By the time he was 6 or 7, Joe had begun to work in a textile mill. His family needed money, and Joe, who was the oldest child, he was sent to work. Now, of course, you might be thinking, wait a second, 6 or 7. This was before child labor laws were a thing, so he was allowed to work. He didn't make a lot of money, and this obviously led to him not getting a good education. He never learned to read or write at any point in his life. Now, at the age of 10, Jackson had dealt with a serious case of the measles. And he actually almost passed away from this. He was actually bedridden for 2 months with this. If it weren't for his mother constantly being by his side helping him, who knows what would have happened. Now, in the year 1900, Jackson would begin to play baseball for a Mills baseball team. He started off as a pitcher, but he was a hard thrower, and he ended up breaking an opponent's arm with a pitch. As a result, no one on the opposing teams wanted to play against this kid. So he was moved to an outfield role where he could still use his arm to throw people out. So he proved to be an elite batsman as well, and he became a bit of a local celebrity, as a matter of fact. In 1903, Joe was given a baseball bat by a fan. This bat, which he would nickname Black Betsy, would be as much of an icon as Joe Jackson himself. The fans would often chant, "Give him Black Betsy," whenever Jackson went to bat. In 1911, now just quickly to discuss Black Betsy. In 1911, Black Betsy broke. Jackson would send the bat to a well-known manufacturer where Black Betsy was repaired. Now, he would use this bat for the rest of his playing days. Now, back to Jackson. From 1900 to 1905, Jackson bounced around mill teams, playing for whoever would give him the most amount of money. By 1905, Joe was playing semi-professional baseball. In 1908, he played for the Greenville Spinners. Now, have you ever wondered how he got the nickname Shoeless? There's a lot of stories on this one, but the main thing is, on June 4th of 1905, the Spinners were getting crushed in a game. As a result, the manager he knew that Joe had pitched in the past, he called on Joe to pitch. And he pitched the final 3 innings of the game. He pitched poorly. He ended up hitting 5 batters. Now, 2 days later, Joe and the Greenville Spinners had played another game. Joe's feet were in pain, possibly due to pitching just 2 days prior. Now, he had asked the manager if he could be benched for the day, but the manager said no. So Joe decided to take off his cleats, and he went to play in the field. No one seemed to notice until he went to the plate and crushed a massive home run. As he rounded third base, it's alleged that a fan from the rival team saw that Joe did not have cleats on, and he shouted, "You shoeless son of a gun, you." Now, this nickname would follow Joe through the rest of his playing career. In August of 1908, Jackson's contract was purchased by the Philadelphia Athletics. Through the end of the 1909 season, Jackson had only appeared in 10 MLB games for the Athletics. Now, he spent most of his time in the minor leagues, and he struggled to adapt to life in the big city. He was also constantly hazed by his teammates. He almost considered leaving baseball. That's how much he hated being on the Philadelphia Athletics. Now, he was traded to the Cleveland Naps before the 1910 season. He left the Athletics with a 150 batting average. Now, Jackson immediately stepped up in the Cleveland minor league system, and he helped to lead their AA affiliate, essentially it was a AA affiliate at that time, to the league pennant, where he would win the batting title as well that year. He would spend the latter part of the 1910 season in Cleveland, where he would appear in 20 games. Now, he would bat .387 over this short time frame. By 1911, he was a full-time Major League starter. Jackson had a rookie year for the history books. He flat out dominated with a 4.08 average, which was second in the league, but easily a rookie record. 233 hits and a league high 468 on base percentage. He also would finish fourth in AL MVP voting, and he would have easily ran away with Rookie of the Year if it had existed at that time. Now, if those numbers aren't impressive, don't worry. Shoeless improved upon them in 1912, where he paced the league in hits with 226, triples with 26, and total bases with 331, while batting .395 on the season. He also would score the first ever run in Tiger Stadium, so just a little tidbit of knowledge there. His 1913 season was also great, as he would lead the league in hits with 197, doubles with 39, and OPS with a 1.011 OPS. Now, he would hit .373 on that season. He would finish second in MVP voting, but he finished behind a career year from Walter Johnson. So, not exactly a bad second place finish. Walter Johnson was just elite that year. So, at this point, it was clear that Shoeless Joe Jackson was a star. Unfortunately, Jackson would miss some time in 1914 due to an injury, and he would end that year with a .338 average and 153 hits over 122 games. In August of 1915, Jackson would be traded to the Chicago White Sox. Cleveland was struggling on the field, and they decided that they would have to kind of go through a little bit of a rebuild, so they wanted to trade him for cash because there weren't people going to the games. They needed the money to stay afloat. So all things considered, Joe did have an off season that year, as he batted a bad, by his standards, .308 with 142 hits. Now, he would rebound well in Chicago in 1916, where he would lead the league in triples with 21 and total bases with 291. He hit .341 on that season. Now, in 1917, he hit .301. This was the lowest batting average of his career, outside of being an athletic, which we're not going to count. There was such a small sample size. Now, he would play well enough that year to help lead Chicago to the World Series. Chicago met with the New York Giants in that World Series and won the series 4-2. In that series, Jackson hit .304 with 4 runs and 2 RBIs. Jackson, like most MLB players, would miss the majority of the 1918 season due to World War I. So rather than serving overseas and being drafted, Joe would work at a shipyard. Now, this was a bit of a controversial decision. He, Lefty Williams, and one other player just kind of up and left the team. They went, all right, we're going to go work at this shipyard. And they were actually all suspended by Comiskey. He actually didn't want to pay them for the last couple months of the season. Now, he would eventually recant, and he would pay them, and he would, revoke their suspension. But it was a source of controversy at that point in time that they just left without really doing anything. Comiskey was like, you can't do that, but they did it anyway. Still, with World War I over in 1919, he did return to the White Sox. So he had another strong regular season in which he would hit .351 that year. Now, he was a key piece for the team as they punched their ticket to the infamous 1919 World Series. The White Sox would go on to lose this series to the Reds 5-3. In this series, he hit .375 with 12 hits, 3 of which were doubles, 1 home run, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. Now, at that point in time, Jackson's 12 hits were a World Series record. He also committed 0 errors in that series. He had a solid start to the 1920 season, where he was hitting .382 with a league-leading 20 triples. However, as the season drew to a close, rumors began to circulate that the 1919 World Series had been thrown. Jackson and 7 other teammates were suspended by Charles Comiskey until further investigation could be completed. Little did Jackson know his major league career was over. Now, like I said, the scandal trial, they'll get their own video later in the week. Now, during this trial, Jackson allegedly admitted to his guilt. He apparently stated, quote, "When a Cincinnati player would bat a ball out into my territory, I'd muff it if I could. That is, fail to catch it. But if it would look too much like crooked work to do that, I'd be slow and make a throw to the infield that would be short. My work netted the Cincinnati team several runs. That they would not have gotten had we been playing on the square," end quote. Sorry about that. Now, there is no proof of this statement in any official court records, but it should be noted that Cincinnati did hit an unordinary amount of triples to left field where Jackson was playing over the course of the series. Now, in 1921, the grand jury acquitted Jackson and the rest of the Black Sox. However, newly appointed commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis put his foot down hard. He declared that any player that throws a baseball game will never play professional baseball again. The full quote will be mentioned in the Kennesaw Mountain Landis video and the Black Sox video itself. Now, Charlie Owens of the Chicago Daily News wrote an article headlined, "Say It Ain't So, Joe." Now, this phrase would become legendary. There's a whole story that a kid went up to Joe Jackson after the trial, after it was announced that he was suspended, and said, "Say it ain't so, Joe." And Joe, looked all sad and walked away and said, "It's true." That never happened. That whole story was taken out of, context. Jackson later on in his life said that never happened. There was no, interaction with the kid. So it's worth noting that, unfortunately, as cool as that story is, it's just not true. Now, alas, Jackson's baseball days were over. He ended his major league career with a .356 average, 1,772 hits, 307 doubles, 168 triples, 54 homers, 873 runs, 792 RBIs, 519 walks, and only 233 strikeouts in 1,332 games played. He was a one-time World Series champion. Of course, to this day, Jackson's involvement in the scandal is highly controversial. Jackson refused to accept the $5,000 bribe until his teammate and best friend, Lefty Williams, would toss it on the floor in his hotel room. Now, after the series came to an end, Jackson apparently attempted to schedule a meeting with White Sox owner Charles Comiskey, but Comiskey refused to meet with him. Now, there's a few different stories as to why he refused to meet with him. Some believe that Comiskey was just mad that the team lost the World Series. Others believe that Jackson, he just kind of went there and Comiskey didn't want to see him, period, because he already knew what Jackson was going to tell him. Now, Jackson allegedly waited around the office for a few hours, and then he changed to, at that point it was clear Comiskey wanted nothing to do with him, so he just left. He went home. So, yeah, Jackson at least made an effort to come forward and acknowledge it, but like I said, Comiskey either already knew or he just didn't want to see any of his players. Now, years later, the other 7 players involved said that Jackson did not attend any of the meetings, and Lefty Williams said that they mentioned Jackson's name to give the plot credibility. Now, the gamblers would not have been interested if Shoeless Joe was not part of the fix. To this day, many fans of this sport still petition the league for Jackson's reinstatement. Many feel that Jackson more than served his punishment, and that, given the evidence, Jackson's name belongs in Cooperstown. Now, after Jackson's ban from baseball, he would return to his home in South Carolina. He played in and later managed semi-pro leagues. Now, after retiring from baseball, Shoeless Joe and his wife would focus on running a couple of businesses. First, they tried to run a barbecue restaurant. After that would fail, they opened a liquor store named Joe Jackson's Liquor Store in 1933. This was during the Depression, so yeah. Now, they would own and operate this facility for 18 years. Now, there's an interesting, well-known story that would happen at this business. In the late 1940s, Ty Cobb would, visit Jackson's store. Cobb made the transaction, and he said, "I know you. You're Joe Jackson. Don't you know me, Joe? I came by especially to say hello." Now, Joe would respond by saying, "I know you, but I wasn't sure you wanted to speak to me. A lot of them don't." So Cobb would praise Joe by saying, "You had the most natural ability, the greatest swing I ever saw." And he also would ask Joe for an autographed baseball. Now, Joe, at this point, he still didn't know how to write, so he kind of told Cobb, "Hey, can you come back tomorrow? I don't have a baseball with me." And he knew that Cobb would not be able to do so. Essentially, Joe was embarrassed. He couldn't write his name, and he was planning to have his wife do it for him behind the scenes. He had a baseball. He could have easily done it, but he just wanted to get, his wife to do it for him because he still couldn't write. He was embarrassed. He didn't want to tell Cobb. So, because Cobb, he was good friends with Shoeless Joe. Anyway, only a couple of years later, on December 5th, 1951, Joe Jackson would pass away from a heart attack. He was 64 years old. Now, he had dealt with health problems towards the end of his life anyway, so it wasn't the most surprising thing. Now, to this day, many people still defend Shoeless Joe Jackson. So he certainly has the numbers to make a Hall of Fame, potential Hall of Fame run, but the Black Sox scandal will always weigh heavily on him. Is his involvement serious? Did he actually know what was going on? Should his, involvement in the whole scandal be pushed aside to induct him into the Hall of Fame? That's up for debate. Now, does he belong in the Hall? Like I said, that's up to who you ask. You're going to always have people that say yes. You're going to have people who say no. So I will give my opinion on Shoeless Joe right now. Does he belong in the Hall of Fame? It's so borderline. When I was a kid, the answer would have been yes, no questions asked. Because you look at it and it's like, oh, he couldn't read or write. How could he have, signed an affidavit? How come he didn't take the bribe money? Fact of the matter is, he took the bribe money, all said and done. Lefty gave it to him. He had a good batting average in the series. I understand that. But he committed an unusual amount of misplays in the outfield. That's a concern right there. Because, yeah, it's not good. Like I said, he took the money. So, do I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame? I'm going to be real with you guys. If these steroid users belong in the Hall of Fame, if they start inducting a bunch of steroid users, and we're getting towards that point with Clemens, Barry Bonds, David Ortiz will be on the ballot soon. If Alex Rodriguez somehow makes it, if these guys all start getting the Hall of Fame, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, if these guys make the Hall of Fame, yes, I think Shoeless Joe should be in the Hall of Fame. I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, my personal opinion, all things considered, no. Shoeless Joe was involved in the scandal. There is no discussion. There's no debate in my mind. He made the mistakes in the field intentionally. Whether or not it was intentional or not, it's up for debate. But the fact is, he took the bribe money. He knew what the bribe money was for. Yes, he didn't attend the meetings. I understand that. But it's just, to me, he knew what was going on. He could have stepped up and told Comiskey right during the games, during the scandal. He could have gone out and said it. And again, using Ray Schalk as an example, he said 7 players, and he listed them. He didn't mention Buck Weaver. He mentioned Shoeless Joe. That tells you something right there. So, unfortunately, yes, I don't think Shoeless Joe belongs in the World Series. But if you start letting these steroid users in, I think you got to make an exception for Shoeless Joe. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That was the Shoeless Joe Jackson player bio. Have a good rest of your day.